As I held my granddaughter in my arms, she suddenly threw up on me. Instead of being upset, I found myself smiling. When my wife walked in, she quipped, "Even the baby can sense when something's trash." My daughter let out a snort of laughter and added, "She's a quick learner." Meanwhile, my son-in-law snapped a picture, labeling me the family's clown for everyone to see. I chose not to respond and simply rocked my granddaughter gently until she drifted off to sleep. The next morning, my wife's repeated calls, 13 to be exact, begged me to undo what I had done. But after enduring years of biting comments and disrespect from my wife, daughter, and son-in-law, their latest jabs pushed me over the edge. They finally crossed the line by ridiculing me in front of my innocent granddaughter, and now they're beginning to understand what happens when their family provider decides enough is enough. For my own peace of mind, I've altered the names, but the emotional scars remain all too real. I'm a 59-year-old man realizing it's time for a change. I'm far from perfect. I've never claimed to be. 3.5 decades ago, I left college to launch my construction business. My hands are weathered and calloused. My back is a constant reminder of the trade I chose, and I've developed a bit of a belly over the years. Despite all that, I managed to craft something out of nothing, ensuring my family has a comfortable life, never grumbling about the 60-hour work weeks that help provide those luxuries. My wife, Wanda, who's now 57, wasn't always critical. In the early days of our marriage, she took pride in what I did. But around our 15th anniversary, something shifted. Perhaps it was when her college peers began climbing the corporate ladder, and she saw her husband return home with dirt under his nails day after day. Or maybe it was when her sister tied the knot with a successful dentist. All I know is the little comments began. Initially, they were veiled as jokes, you know. "Oh, Heath, you're tracking mud and again." Classic construction guy move. It's just little things at first, but over time they snowball into something much bigger. 3 years ago, our daughter Malia and her husband Patrick were having a tough time finding a place to live. The housing market here is completely nuts. I happen to own a rental property that brings in a decent income, but family always takes priority, right? So I offered it to them for less than half the going rate. Patrick is involved in tech, something to do with computers, though every time he explains it, I completely zone out. Malia works in marketing. Both of them earn good salaries, yet they constantly act like they're on the edge of bankruptcy. For the last 3 years, I've been charging them just $950 a month for a home that's worth at least $2,000 to $100. I've taken care of all the repairs myself whenever something breaks, let them use our streaming service accounts, and even added them to our car insurance policy temporarily, which, let's be real, has turned into 3 years. Oh, and I watched their baby, who's now 8 months old, for free several times a week. And what do I get in return for all I do? Constant disrespect. Take last Christmas, for example. Patrick put me on the spot, asking if I even knew how to use a smartphone right there in front of everyone. Mind you, I've been running my entire business with the same Samsung phone for the past 4 years. When I mentioned this, he sarcastically remarked on how impressive it was for someone who still writes checks at the grocery store. Everyone burst into laughter, except me. Wanda, on the other hand, loves to drop these backhanded comments during dinner about how I embarrass her at restaurants because I can't figure out which fork to use. Well, we grew up poor sorry if I missed the fancy fork lessons along the way, and just last month at a family BBQ, I overheard her telling her sister that I'm the perfect example of someone who peaked in high school. Sure, I was a leader in both football and wrestling, didn't realize it was something to be ashamed of now. Even more disheartening, Malia starting to mimic her mother's behavior. Last week, I managed to fix their dishwasher, saving them a $150 service call. As I worked, she began telling Alia, "This is why we want you to go to college, so you won't have to be on your hands and knees at your grandpa's age." I just kept my focus on the task, but it was 2 days ago that really got to me. I was taking care of Alia while the rest of them went out for a wine tasting. I adore that little girl more than anything. She's the only one in that house whose face lights up when she sees me. As I held her after her bottle, gently rocking her and whispering sweet nothings, just typical grandpa stuff, started getting fussy and ended up throwing up all over my shirt. Just normal baby antics, right? I simply smiled at her, reassured her that it was all right, and began cleaning us both up. That's when they came back home earlier than I expected. But instead of lending a hand, Wanda just looked at me and remarked that the baby seemed to know. Imagine being dismissed with those exact words, feeling a wave of rejection crash over you. Even my wife, Malia, chuckled, saying I was quick to learn. Then Patrick, with a cheeky grin, pulled out his phone to snap a photo, declaring me the family clown. I felt like a joke in my own home. I just kept my head down, tending to the baby until she fell asleep, then placed her gently in her crib before returning home. About an hour later, Wanda walked in. Her arrival marked by new complaints, seemingly oblivious to the earlier events. That night, sleep evaded me. I couldn't escape the haunting echo of their words or the memory of their dismissive expressions. I thought back to 35 years of marriage, to my cherished daughter and granddaughter, and the painful realization hit me they saw me as nothing more than the family clown or even garbage. Yesterday morning, while Wanda was away at her yoga class, I decided enough was enough. It was time to make some crucial calls that were long overdue. What my family doesn't realize is that while I might struggle with fancy dining etiquette, I have a firm grasp on the world of finance. I have a pretty good idea of who foots the bill in this family. I've uncovered Patrick's secret online gambling escapade, the one he thinks is hidden from everyone. Little does he know I've been checking the activity on our home Wi-Fi network. Then there's Wanda, with her nearly maxed out secret credit card. It's quite the show seeing how financially reliant they are on good old oblivious Heath. After wrapping up those phone calls, a wave of calm washed over me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in years. I headed to the garage, cracked open a cold beer, and waited for the inevitable storm to hit. At 6:43 this morning, my phone started buzzing relentlessly. First Wanda called, then Malia, followed by Patrick, and back to Wanda again, a total of 13 calls, all while I sipped my coffee and watched the sunrise. Each voicemail grew more desperate than the last, but I haven't returned any of those calls. After all, spend decades letting people walk all over you, and they tend to forget you have the power to stand up for yourself whenever you choose. They're about to remember something they'll never forget. Here's the first update on my journey. First and foremost, I have to express my heartfelt gratitude for all your incredible support. Waking up to thousands of notifications blew my mind. It was absolutely overwhelming in the best way possible. Many of you wondered if I was just playing for sympathy points. I wish that were the case, but unfortunately, this is my reality. Here's a glimpse into what happened. Last time I shared, my own family humiliated me in front of my granddaughter, labeling me as nothing more than garbage and a clown for their amusement. The next morning, as the tables turned, I decided to embrace my power. I made a few strategic calls and, with no regret, ignored 13 increasingly frantic calls from them. So what exactly did I do? Let me walk you through it. For years, I have been the family's financial lifeline. The majority of my earnings have gone to support those who, it's clear now, value me less than the dirt under their nails. I had my eyes set on retirement in 3 years, a plan that hinged on their cooperation. But after this, everything's about to change. After the whole garbage debacle, I knew it was time to retire, at least from being an endless bank for my family. Remember mentioning Patrick's gambling issues? I had no idea the extent of it. He's blown through around $65,000 on sports betting and poker in just 2 years. He thinks he's clever with his private browsing, but the router never lies. And then there are the collection notices I spot sometimes when I visit them for household repairs. Malia, blissfully unaware, is left out of the loop because Patrick's been intercepting their mail to hide his financial snafus. Then there's Wanda, my beloved wife for the past 35 years, who harbors a secret shopping addiction. How did I find out? A credit card statement meant to end up at her sister's place mistakenly landed in our mailbox. It turns out she has 3 covert credit cards, racking up $42,000 in debt without my supposed knowledge. Designer handbags, sparkly jewelry, high-end clothes all bought, while she constantly assures me everything is under control. We need to manage our budget more wisely, especially when it comes to buying new work boots. My intention isn't about seeking revenue, it's about facing reality head-on. My first call was to my attorney to arrange a consultation for that very day, focusing on safeguarding my assets. Next, I reached out to the property management company. I informed them that, effective immediately, we would be adjusting the rental rate for Malia and Patrick's house to reflect the current market value, raising it from $950 to $2,200. A formal notice would follow within 48 hours. The third call was to my bank, where I initiated the process of separating accounts and securing my savings. I then contacted the insurance company to remove Patrick and Nalia's vehicles from our policy. Finally, I spoke with my accountant to discuss restructuring my business to protect my retirement funds. By noon, everything was set in motion. This wasn't about spite. It was about taking control. I was putting an end to the unending drain of my finances into the hands of those who see me as worthless. Once home, I settled into a weight that felt both anticipatory and uncertain. It wasn't long before Wanda returned from her yoga session around 1 p.m. At first glance, everything seemed routine. She launched into her usual post-class commentary, grumbling about someone in class wearing leggings she deemed inappropriate. Meanwhile, I sat at the kitchen table, half-heartedly scrolling through my phone, my responses minimal and distracted. Then her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from my attorney. one that included me in the loop, confirming our upcoming appointment to discuss financial restructuring and the possible division of our assets. I watched as the color drained from her face, replacing annoyance with a stark paleness. With a mix of disbelief and accusation, she fired off questions. What was this all about? Was I involved with someone else? Had I lost my marbles? I answered calmly, assuring her that I was not seeing anyone and that I hadn't lost my mind. In fact, I had finally gained clarity. Seeing that anger wasn't working, Wanda quickly shifted gears. Her demeanor softened, and suddenly I was honey and sweetheart as she tried to navigate this unexpected turn of events. Instead of joining my family's chaos, I chose to savor my sandwich in peace. As the clock struck 3 p.m., my phone buzzed relentlessly with texts from Malia. Apparently, the property management company had announced a rent delivery scheduled at our house. Confused, she demanded to know if there'd been a slip-up. My response was succinct, no. Shortly after, Patrick began calling. I let his calls roll into voicemail, where he left for increasingly frantic messages. In his final plea, I could hear the strain in his voice as he begged me to give them time to figure things out. By the time dinner rolled around, Wanda had descended into full-blown panic. She'd checked our joint accounts only to find that I had transferred most of the money out, leaving just enough for our regular expenses. Tears streamed down her face as she sobbed, struggling to comprehend what had come over me. I reminded her about the hurtful comment regarding the trash, thinking she might see the impact it had on me. She brushed it off, claiming it was just a joke and that I was being overly sensitive. That was the moment I decided to show her the printouts of her hidden credit card statements. The transformation on her face was astonishing, as if she'd just witnessed a ghost. She sank into the kitchen chair, speechless, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. In all our years together, Wanda was never at a loss for words, but now she had nothing to say. That night I found solace in the spare room, not because she asked me to, but because being near her felt unbearable. My phone buzzed relentlessly with notifications demanding my attention. I silenced it, needing space to process. The following morning, I met with my attorney. We spent 2 intense hours exploring the best course of action, not necessarily divorce, but how to protect myself moving forward. He advised me to keep a detailed record of everything, from every cruel jibe to each financial secret. Luckily, I had already begun. I arrived home to find Malia waiting in our driveway, with little Alia strapped snugly in her car seat in the back. Her choice to use my granddaughter as leverage was a low blow. For a moment, Alia's innocent face nearly softened my resolve, but then the memory of their laughter while I was drenched in baby spit-up flashed in my mind. Malia tried tears first, but when they didn't sway me, she switched to anger. Her voice broke as she asked how I could do this to them. How were they supposed to afford next month's rent now that the rate had gone up? The thought of moving was unbearable to her. Did I really want my granddaughter living in some rundown apartment because her grandfather was having a midlife crisis? I met Malia's gaze and calmly asked if she had any knowledge of Patrick's gambling habits. The shock on her face was revealing. She was completely in the dark. I gently suggested that she have a conversation with him about the $65,000 before worrying about where they'd be living next month. Tears streamed down her face as she walked away, but not before I shared a heartfelt goodbye kiss with Alia. It was a moment that tore at my heartstrings, truly one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. By the week's end, the situation spiraled out of control. Patrick stormed into my workplace, creating an embarrassing spectacle. He swung wildly between pleading and threatening, vowing to ensure I'd never see Alia again unless I backed off. I discreetly recorded the entire encounter on my phone, knowing I might need it later. Wanda has temporarily moved in with her sister after I stood firm on the financial adjustments. Before leaving, she attempted one last ditch emotional gambit, questioning if our 35 years of marriage meant nothing to me. I echoed her words back to her, reflecting the same question. 2 weeks have slipped by now. All the formal notices have been sent out, and my attorney has crafted legal documents to safeguard my assets. According to the property management company, Malia and Patrick have yet to pay the new rent amount. Last night, I found myself sitting alone on my deck, sipping a beer, reflecting on the day. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with a notification. Patrick had tagged me in a social media post. The image was of me, covered humorously in baby spit up, paired with a long, bitter rant about how ungrateful boomer parents supposedly abandoned their families. The post hadn't gained any traction or likes, and just 3 comments urging him to take it down. This morning, I woke to a simple yet foreboding text from Malia. "We need to talk. We've arranged to meet for coffee tomorrow." Without Patrick, she mentioned she discovered something on the computer they share and insists it's crucial I see it. I'm bracing myself for whatever revelation lies ahead. Inside, I'm torn. There's a pang of guilt, particularly concerning Alia, yet a stronger feeling is emerging self-respect. For the first time in what feels like forever, I'm standing my ground. I refuse to be a doormat, be treated like garbage, or be dismissed as a clown. I'm just a man who has finally realized that his dignity is worth the battle. Finally, here's an update. Something magical happens when you stop worrying about what others think of you. It's like unlocking a hidden superpower. For 60 years, my life revolved around seeking approval, but now I sleep the sleep of the fearless. Last we spoke, I was gearing up to meet Malia for coffee, a meeting that Patrick would be skipping. She had uncovered something on their computer that she insisted I needed to see. Little did I know that encounter at the coffee shop was only the beginning of their unraveling nightmare and my newfound freedom. When Malia arrived, she looked like she had weathered a storm, hair unkempt, eyes red from sleepless nights, and draped in a college-era hoodie. Her wedding ring was conspicuously absent. Without uttering a single word, she slid her laptop towards me. What appeared on the screen was more than just confirmation, it was a revelation. Patrick's gambling problem wasn't just a small hurdle, it was a mountain of debt. The figure wasn't $65,000 like I had thought, it was a staggering $112,000. He had mortgaged their car and maxed out 7 credit cards. This was the moment I nearly lost it. I discovered that money was missing from Malia's college fund, a precious gift her grandparents had lovingly set aside for her future. But the betrayal didn't stop there. As I delved deeper, I found a string of emails to a woman named Dolores, stretching back a staggering 18 months. The messages were explicit and detailed, accompanied by hotel receipts and images I desperately wished I could erase from my memory. The most galling part, Patrick had been using my Wi-Fi to send these incriminating emails whenever they visited my home. All the while I was under the same roof, lending a hand with chores like fixing their garbage disposal or watching their little one for free. Malia was not crying. She'd moved past that point. In a voice weighed down by the gravity of it all, she asked if she and Alia could stay with me temporarily. I agreed, but with a condition. This wasn't going to be yet another situation where I stepped in to clean up someone's mess. It was time for a change. What I didn't tell her was the full extent of what I had already set in motion. Remember those calls I mentioned? Well, after consulting with my attorney, I had securely moved 90% of my assets into protected accounts and trusts. But that was just the beginning. I picked up the phone and reached out to Patrick's parents, his boss, and even the guy who organizes the Thursday night poker game. I laid everything out for them with undeniable evidence to back up my claims. Patrick's parents were absolutely horrified, and his boss started questioning his judgment. Meanwhile, his poker buddies decided to drop him from their weekly games. It was a whirlwind 48 hours, but I wasn't done yet. I meticulously gathered every cruel text, email, and hurtful comment my family had ever made about me, screenshots, recordings, whole lot. I compiled every piece into a shared folder and sent it to Wanda's sister, her parents, and her closest friends with a straightforward message. This is how my family has treated me for years. Now I'm done. The text messages flooded in instantly. Wanda's sister called her disgusting. Her mother felt nothing but shame. Her best friend from college claimed she couldn't recognize the Wanda reflected in those messages. By the week's end, Wanda found herself with nowhere to go. Her sister had kicked her out. She called me 13 more times, each message tinged with increasing desperation. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Meanwhile, Patrick was unraveling. His friend Xavier gave him the boot after just 3 days because he couldn't pitch in for beer. With no family to lean on and no friends willing to help, Patrick found himself in dire straits. He had maxed out his credit cards, drained his accounts. Then, in the middle of the night, he showed up at my doorstep, pounding furiously on the door. It was a chaotic scene that I won't soon forget. Clearly intoxicated, he was shouting about wanting to see his daughter. I was too cautious to open the door, so instead I reached for my new security app and contacted the police, capturing the whole outburst with my doorbell camera. When the authorities arrived, they discovered cocaine in his vehicle. Clearly his problem, not mine. The next day, Malia took action and filed for emergency custody. About 2 weeks later, I had an unexpected encounter with Wanda at the grocery store. In the produce section, she trailed after me, pleading for just 5 minutes to explain herself. I picked up my phone, hit record, and told her to go ahead. Right there, between the apples and zucchini, she broke down and said all the things I anticipated. Apologies poured out of her. She was sorry, admitted to being horrible, claimed she didn't understand why she acted that way, and promised to change. As she spoke, I maintained my composure and simply asked if she remembered the day she called me garbage in front of others. Our granddaughter, I asked her if she remembered laughing when Patrick snapped that photo. I asked if she recalled 35 years of tiny cuts, little things that add up over time. Then, with my card in hand, I turned away, leaving her standing there, tears streaming down her face. 3 people caught the moment on their phones, and by dinner, it was all over local social media. Was it petty? Absolutely. Did it feel incredible? You bet it did. A month later, the real consequences kicked in. The property management company began eviction proceedings after Patrick and Malia missed their second rent payment. Their credit scores took a nosedive. Patrick found himself unable to get approval for even a studio apartment in the roughest part of town. Wanda realized just how hard it was to live on her actual income. Her membership at the fancy yoga studio was a thing of the past, as were her weekly luxuries. Her salon appointments were canceled, and her luxury SUV was repossessed. At 57, she had to take on a roommate and pick up extra shifts just to make ends meet. For the first time in their adult lives, they were facing the harsh realities of life without the comfort of a safety net. Yet, amidst the chaos, Malia stood out as a beacon of resilience and transformation. She took on a second job, began therapy, filed for divorce, and cut up her credit cards, determined to pave a new path for herself. When she expressed gratitude for staying with me, I assured her it was not a matter of charity. She was contributing by paying reduced rent and helping with chores. No more freeloading. 3 months after everything had turned upside down, I decided to meet with all of them under my roof and on my terms. When they arrived, they looked like shadows of their former selves. Wanda had gained weight and let her hair grow out naturally, no longer covering it up. Patrick had shed at least 20 pounds and couldn't seem to keep still. It was a stark reminder of how much life can change, yet also a testament to the strength they found in the face of adversity. Malia stood a little distance away from both of them, watching the scene unfold. I made my conditions crystal clear. I was open to helping Malia and Alia get back on their feet, but only if they agreed to a formal repayment plan for any support I provided. For Patrick, things were more straightforward. Before he could even think about having unsupervised visits with Alia, he had to complete treatment for his gambling addiction, secure a stable job, and consistently pay child support. As for Wanda and me, our separation would stand firm. If there was ever a possibility of reconciliation, it would demand intensive couples therapy, a post-nuptial agreement, and permanently separate finances. I drew a line in the sand. No one would ever disrespect me again. One mistake, and they'd be out of my life for good. Our conversations were filled with tears, arguments, and pleas for understanding. Yet, in the end, they all agreed in it because it was what they wanted, not because they realized they had no other option. It's been 6 months now. Where have we arrived? Just last month, Malia and Alia moved into a cozy little apartment, marking a new beginning. She's really holding her own with just a bit of help from me here and there. I pitch in with babysitting occasionally, and I gave her a loan, which she surprisingly repaid right on time. Patrick has successfully completed 30 days of inpatient treatment, and he's landed a job delivering packages. He visits Alia twice a week during supervised sessions, though he still gives me this wary look, as if a single phone call from me could end everything for him. Progress with Wanda has been slow. We've had just 6 counseling sessions so far, We're still living apart, and honestly, I'm not sure if we'll ever share a home again. The counselor pointed out that I have some unresolved anger-ish. Was no surprise there. Yesterday was Alia's first birthday. We kept it simple with a small celebration at Malia's new place, marking a milestone in her little life. Everyone was on their best behavior. No snarky comments, no eye-rolling, just awkward politeness, and the genuine affection everyone had for that sweet little girl. At one point, as I held Alia in my arms, she managed to spit up on my shirt once again. An uncomfortable silence swept across the room as everyone froze, their eyes flickering between me and the baby. Despite the chaos, I smiled down at her and reassured her that it was all right, calmly beginning to clean us both up. Not a single word was uttered. The tension was so palpable, you could slice it with a knife. That's when I looked up, facing the family who had treated me like an outsider for years. With a hint of defiance, I asked, "Does anyone want to comment on this? Anyone at all?" Their responses were telling. Ties darted to the floor, and Patrick literally stepped back. Wanda pretended to be absorbed in folding a napkin, while Malia quickly shook her head, clearly not willing to stir the pot. In that moment, I realized I'd truly turned the tables. But does the story end here? Absolutely not. Families are intricate webs of relationships, and ours is no different. Yet the old dynamics have crumbled, never to return. My family has come to a crucial understanding. I'm not just there for convenience. I'm not a cash machine, nor am I a punchline. Sometimes the sweetest form of payback isn't a grand plot, but rather allowing others to meet the repercussions of their choices. And I'll be there, watching peacefully from afar, savoring a cold beer, with a retirement fund that's securely out of their reach.